the island. On Monday, September 6th, we want to thank you, so we're throwing a party.
For our viewers, thank you for watching, and thanks for telling us your stories. And thank you
To our remarkable advertisers.
who support your island station.
Join us Labor Day Monday.
From 4 to 7 at our Victoria studios.
We want to shake your hand and say thanks.
We wouldn't be here now without you. Join CHEK as we celebrate 1 year as an independently owned station. Monday, September 6th. CHEK News, sports with Paul Nason. Weekends at 5 and 10. Tonight on CHEK News.
Shocking revelations. Newly exposed documents say the government had been discussing the HST far sooner than was first thought. Still paying.
It's outrageous.
A disgraced RCMP officer is still collecting a paycheck more than 3 years after being suspended. And a case of true teamwork.
He was pretty much gone.
A group of hockey players are honored for saving the life of one of their own.
From our Vancouver Island newsroom, this is CHEK News. Here's Tony Parsons.
Good evening. Newly released documents clearly show the Campbell government was considering the impact of introducing the harmonized sales tax well before they were re-elected in 2009. The documents show that there were ongoing discussions between finance officials here in Victoria and in Ottawa. They contain briefing notes keeping Finance Minister Colin Hanson up to date on the issue. They also show that a communications plan was in full swing in case the media asked about the tax. All in all, it would appear the HST was on the radar of the BC government long before Premier Gordon Campbell said it was. The CBC's Stephen Smart reports.
It's been almost a mantra for the Liberals ever since the HST was announced.
We were transparent, we were open, we told people what their assumptions were. We've been very clear with regard to the HST. It was not anywhere on our radar as we went through the election.
An insistence government did not have any plans to impose the tax until after the vote. But documents obtained under the Freedom of Information Act tell a different story. They show as far back as January of 2009, politicians were being briefed on the issue. In March of 2009, another briefing note, this time sent directly to the finance minister. This document goes to great lengths to point out specific pros and cons of the tax. Then, later in March, things appear to pick up steam as Ontario adopted the HST. Communications officials here start a file and begin closely monitoring media reports concerning the tax. All the while, the Liberals, embarking on their election campaign, say nothing. Then, just 1 day before the election, this email was sent to the Federal Tax Policy Branch in Ottawa, asking specific questions about how a province like BC could tailor the HST to suit its purposes. Despite the optics, Colin Hanson insists bureaucrats may have been looking at the HST, but politicians weren't.
What those were are public servants doing their job, and that's to understand tax policy so that they're in a position to brief governments on the pros and cons, which is exactly what documents reflect.
But that doesn't answer the main question. How can you claim a government didn't have the HST on its radar when clearly branches of it did? Would you not agree that the statement that it was not on the government's radar is not valid? It was at least on the radar of some parts of government.
I could not say, and I never have, that it was not being looked at by ministry staff. It was not on the radar of the government of the day.
But with respect, when the Premier comes out and you come out and say it was not on our radar, would you not think that the public would assume that that would encompass the whole government, not just that you haven't been told what other levels are working on?
No, it's cabinet that makes the decisions.
NDP leader Carol James is slamming the Campbell government tonight. James says the documents are evidence of a betrayal of the public's trust by the Liberals.
From the start, the Premier, the Finance Minister, BC Liberal MLAs have been saying over and over again to the public, the HST was not on our radar screen before the election. Well, it's very clear from these documents it was on their radar screen. They were looking at options, they were exploring the HST, so it's another betrayal of trust for the public.
And the man leading the anti-HST fight, former Premier Bill Vander Zalm, said today's revelations are devastating for the Campbell government. Vander Zalm also says the Premier and the Finance Minister must go.
It was a lie from the beginning, and I think the people generally felt the same. But to hear it or to see it all confirmed now, it's unfortunately, I think, a disaster for the province. It's the biggest lie we've ever experienced in the history of the province, and I think the Premier and the Minister of Finance should step down. They should recall the legislature and call an election.
In other news tonight, he was being paid to protect the public, but instead he was having sex on the job. And tonight, as Kristen Robinson reports, more than 2.5 years after he was ordered to resign from the RCMP, a Shawnigan Lake Mountie is still collecting a full salary.
Anything you want to say to the public?
Just that I'm sorry.
The apology wasn't enough for the RCMP. Officer Trent Richards had sex on the job numerous times. A disciplinary board found his conduct an egregious breach of RCMP and public trust. He was ordered to resign within 14 days or be dismissed. That was in February 2008. But Richards is still collecting a paycheck 2.5 years later.
It's outrageous. The fact that he's on full pay is just unacceptable.
Richards appealed the decision to RCMP Commissioner William Elliott, but did not dispute what he did. While working alone on the night shift at the rural detachment in Shawnigan Lake, Constable Richards used RCMP computers to visit online dating sites, where he arranged at least 15 sexual encounters, using RCMP cruisers to hook up with 4 different women. He was suspended with pay in January 2007 and has been collecting a full salary of $74,500 a year ever since. 3 years and 7 months later, and 2.5 years after his appeal was launched, taxpayers have shelled out more than $267,000 in salary to Richards.
This is completely unacceptable. What we're seeing here are the slow wheels of justice grinding taxpayers into the ground.
Richards remains suspended with pay while his appeal awaits a decision by the Commissioner. RCMP say the lawyers reviewing the appeal report directly to Parliament, and the length of the process is out of their hands.
There needs to be a time limit for sure, because to be on full salary at public expense for 2 years when there's no disagreement about the charges is difficult to understand.
This is a prime example of taxpayer abuse, a prime example of the kind of thing that needs to stop.
Richards' appeal alone could cost taxpayers up to $250,000. Until it's complete, he'll keep getting paid. MP Denise Savoy is writing the federal justice minister demanding an answer as to why the appeal is taking so long.
And more problems for the RCMP tonight. 3 Kamloops RCMP officers and 3 civilian employees have been suspended with pay. It's the fallout from an inside incident in an RCMP jail cell. The CBC's Chris Brown reports.
For the Kamloops Mounties, this summer was one bad news story after another. A fatal shooting of an unarmed man, other officers charged with assault and excessive force, and now 7 police and civilian staff under criminal investigation for watching 2 women have sex in a jail cell. For Claire Hannigan, the notion of Mounties serving and protecting rings very hollow.
But in this detachment, it just seemed to be, you know, a constant repeat of poor reactions or bad performance of the local RCMP.
5 years ago, a Kamloops Mountie shot and killed her brother Steve because the officer said he feared he was about to be rammed by the stolen pickup truck he was driving. An inquest ruled the incident a homicide, but no charges were laid.
They all back one another, and then with their us versus them attitude, that they really feel that they are entitled to behave, you know, differently.
The latest sex in the jail cell incident has fired up debate here over the competence of the RCMP, and has many people questioning whether the detachment still deserves the trust of the public.
This incident in particular is particularly discouraging. It is very disappointing.
Today, the Mounties said 3 of the 4 officers who watched the 2 women have sex are being suspended indefinitely. And this advocate for female prisoners says it's not the first she's heard of male officers behaving badly.
We've had a number of reports, and I think it's really inappropriate that, you know, they're being monitored by men, you know, on surveillance, because they have their washroom in their cell, that sort of thing.
Still, there are many here who say people should cool the Mountie bashing, social activist Bob Hughes among them.
This street alone was known as basically the epicenter of the drug trade and street level crime. And really what's happened in the last 3 to 4 years is a really coherent and comprehensive effort that has involved the RCMP to really challenge that.
Kamloops' mayor is actually praising the RCMP for a new policy of openness.
When you ask for that, you need to expect that from time to time there is going to be the light shone on some of these unfortunate incidents.
In other words, the incident at the jail is something that might not have come out in the past. The mayor's take, perhaps the only way to give an incident like this a positive spin.
Farmers across Vancouver Island will soon be harvesting their fall crops, but it is also harvest time for criminals. Marijuana plants and outdoor grow operations are ready for picking, but as Dean Stokes reports, the RCMP is beating many of the growers to their plants.
If you've seen an RCMP helicopter in the air recently, chances are it's been hunting for illegal drugs. It's harvest time in BC, and criminals who grow pot plants find hidden away places in the woods to do it. So choppers like Air 8 based in Comox have been busy spotting over 460 locations in the last few weeks.
There's a lot of outdoor grows, and we're just trying to get at these before they're in full bud, before they hit the streets of our communities.
After a grow-up is spotted from the air, officers then usually have to bushwhack their way into the location, cutting tools in hand to cut down every plant they find. This grow-up near Wolf Lake outside Courtenay had 118 plants, or enough for roughly 20,000 joints.
In this project, there's been 22,600 plants that have been cut, and they'll still be cutting for, days to come. So I don't know what our number is going to be at the end of this project, but that's pretty significant.
Those responsible for this grow have not been caught and probably won't be, but police say just destroying the plants and disrupting the flow of drugs is just as important. These plants have been placed in potting bags and set in a moist, swampy area that likely remained wet even during the driest times this summer. A fertilizer like Miracle Grow is also used.
The outdoor grows, they use the ability of the natural sunlight and the warm weather to grow plants outdoors. To grow these indoors would take a significant amount of money with lights and those kinds of things. And just trying to conceal it indoors also is a little bit more difficult.
But hiding this crop outside is becoming increasingly difficult as well. Many farmers will return to their fields this fall to find their plants already gone.
Police on Vancouver Island are cracking down on bad driving as officers gear up for the long weekend. As Kylie Stanton explains, they say there will be zero tolerance for dangerous driving as police attempt to stop a growing number of fatal crashes.
We have a gold Ford minivan.
It's one way to send a message.
If you choose to travel in an unsafe manner, we will be looking for you.
So we got a guy here at 106 in the 80 zone.
The Saanich Police Department, Integrated Road Safety Unit, and the RCMP hit the roads, issuing tickets to speeding motorists along the Pat Bay Highway.
Speed 108.
The blitz is meant to make the roads safer ahead of the long weekend, a notoriously dangerous holiday with an average of 40 crashes each day in the capital region.
If we can avoid or prevent one crash, then all of this will have been worth it.
Just yesterday, a pedestrian was killed along this stretch, hit by a southbound transport truck. And on Monday, another fatal accident on the Malahat. It's a tragic reminder of just how dangerous the roads can be, but the accidents are often preventable.
As a driver, we actually have certain things we need to do. Driver distraction. I mean, we need to put those cell phones away. We need to observe the posted speed limit, leave lots of distance between us and the car in front. It's really simple things that we can do to prevent these crashes.
As the number of accidents rise, so does the need for blood. Officers drove the point home, rolling up their sleeves.
We need to ensure that we collect a target so that we can facilitate and provide to the hospitals, which are our other clients, the needed blood that they require.
Again, we'll conduct this enforcement for approximately an hour and a half.
Issuing tickets is the first step in potentially keeping motorists from causing an accident.
He's driving on a busy road in a busy city. And there's a lot of other people that they're putting at risk.
And the hope is to change bad driving behavior altogether.
I look at it as I really am trying to help these people. and trying to make the road safer for everybody.